Final stop, Brazil. Book 2, Life After Hell. Chapter 31. Freedom, a Question of Money. 26th of April 2008. For 2 weeks I followed on TV the case Isabella Nardoni, a 5-year-old girl thrown out of the window from the 6th floor in the night and died of her injuries. It happened here in the neighborhood in Carandiru. The evidence showed clearly that the father or stepmother abused the girl first and then threw her head first out of the window, not without cutting open the security bars by a pair of scissors first. Nobody, especially the police, believed in the testimony of the father that a stranger had broken into the apartment to do this horrible act. Both the father and his wife came in 30-day pre-trial detention, which could be extended for another 30 days. All the more I was shocked when they let go both on the last Friday again. Mind you, against the will of the prosecution. It was a decision of a single judge. Obviously, he had been bribed. The father of the main suspect, a well-heeled lawyer who could easily buy a condo for his son and another for his daughter, each for 300,000 reais, could also buy a judge. Apart from the hideousness of this case, I felt myself affected, as this was the living example of the corruption in this country. And this happened under protest of the population and in public. This led to the serious question I asked myself whether I really wanted to stay in this country, in which was no justice. I myself had not the slightest prospect of early release, because I lacked the wherewithal to bribe a judge. After my release, I would have to fight for a right to stay or live an undercover life. Why should I do this to me? On the other hand, where should I go? For the first time, I played with the idea to return to Michael, but only the thought of Germany deterred me. Not only that, but what I would have to expect there. A son who would need me no more, or maybe only to pick up the pieces. Loneliness, poverty, social marginalization, if not financially, dependency on my son. Oh, Michael, if you had only stayed in Spain. It was always becoming more difficult to fight against my deep depression, especially after I read the reasoning of the judge, why she refused semi-aberto and would not allow the release on parole. I felt particularly bad. Julia's address was not recognized, and with foreigners the risk of escape was too high. It was ridiculous. Where should I escape to? I took down the name and address of this judge and wrote a letter to her. Politely but clearly I wrote to her, explained that I was forced to commit this crime, that this was a diabolical plan of my ex-boyfriend to bring me into jail, that I had lost everything I ever possessed, owning nothing and no one to where I could go back to. I asked the judge to see us foreigners as individuals and not to be judged all the same. If she would ever read my letter was doubtful. My only hope now was in the outcome of the appeal proceedings. Julia wrote me that she did not forget. However, she had very little time. Still, she was convinced that Wesley did everything to bring me out of there. If this was not the case, she would be the first to protest. As in every letter, she gave me the feeling that someone out there was waiting for me. Nevertheless, I was not only thinking about going on a hunger strike, but was more than ready to do so. I had nothing to lose anymore, just my life, and that was worth nothing. Here, however, I couldn't do this to Donna Edith, who was already worried about me because it didn't, of course, remain hidden to her that I ate less and less. Instead, left my food to her. So I thought about it again to be moving to PE, because there I was alone, or only with one more person in a cell, and I could well go on hunger strike there. Yasmin was still there, and in the same desperate situation as me. My only highlight was the 25th anniversary show of Transcontinental, transmitted on television, with all the samba classics performing live. The only problem was to convince Donna Edith to miss out her novella under exceptional circumstances. After I brought the cell to a high gloss and washed all the laundry from Donna Edith on Saturday, she wanted to pay me for it. This I refused, of course, asked her instead to fulfill my heart's desire. "Oh, if it is no more to make you happy, then you can watch the show, sing and dance as you please," was her answer. 2 weeks later, the show came on TV I had listened to on the radio, and from now on, Transcontinental transmitted each Saturday a samba show on TV, Sábado Samba. The only thing still making me happy. In respect of the case Isabel Nadone, I hoped that the criminal police acted fast to bring this monster back in jail, because in this case, surely, was a very high risk of flight. Again, I thought a lot about Michael. I was worried because once again had 3 months passed since his last letter. The desire at least to talk to him once was always powerful, but I was not allowed. Wesley had explained to me that I had no rights or claims to make a telephone call. However, I had sent him the phone number of the prison. Hardly anyone could prohibit him to call here. Repeatedly, I had asked Rosie to return my book, because after she had broke off contact with me, I didn't know what she would do with the book. Probably nothing. Somehow, I myself would have to take care of it. My fighting spirit had suddenly awakened, and that as determined as never before. This time, I wanted to put everything on one card. I had planned everything and was willing to go to the extreme, in the form of a hunger strike, if need, until the end. I could go on no longer. My life had lost its meaning a long time. But first, I wrote a long letter to Michael, told him that I loved him very much, that I was worried since I hadn't heard nothing from him, gave him instructions to call me, and especially how, what he had to say, and do so, the guards would call me on the phone. However, I asked him to call Rosie first to ascertain if and when she would return my book. The letter I addressed to Michael's guardian to ensure that he received it. I wanted the guardian, specifically, to read this letter as well, so he knew what it was about, and to give Michael help with the phone calls. I also announced my hunger strike, and wrote the name of the judge, explaining that it was her who delayed the proceedings on my case arbitrary, and I was therefore forced to take this action. Told him that I was ready for the extreme, and if anything should happen to me, this judge was responsible. Both letters are sent out by ITTC, planning to wait exactly 1 month until 25th of May 2008 for Michael's call. But with or without a call, this would be the first day of my hunger strike here in PFC. To Wesley, I announced my intention and also informed him that the name of the judge was on its way to Germany, and I was only waiting for the signal to begin the hunger strike. As my lawyer, I counted on his support to inform the judge of my plan and to tell her that she'd achieve some fame if she left me hunger until the end. My requirement, a result of the appeal proceedings. I also refused categorically any further application for semi-aberto, not caring any more whether they would deport me or not. If so, I would go. If not, I would remain. But I didn't want to stay with all force anymore in a country crowded with corrupt judges and more cases triggered through the media, in which wealthy people or people with a certain level of fame bought themselves their freedom how they pleased. The last case capped it all for me when the TV reporter Roberto Cabrini was caught in the act with cocaine in his car. The police took him into custody. 2 days later, he was free again. Official explanation: he had been investigating on a case and was lurked into a trap. What? So somebody aimed a gun at him and forced him to store the cocaine in his car? In my letter to Wesley, I wrote this, among other examples, and let my anger run wild. I also insisted to denounce the policeman who arrested me, this Fabio Lucetti, to file charges for mental abuse and theft. Wesley promptly stood on the doormat after he received my letter and wanted me to confirm that I actually wolfed semi-aberto. This I did. He offered me sustenção do processo for 400 reais. I felt like at an auction. However, agreed also I didn't even know what that meant. But each attempt to get me out of here was okay with me. On the issue of hunger strike, Wesley didn't say anything, but he took the charge against Fabio serious, and we co-authored the text for it. Unfortunately, the charge was rejected later on the grounds that the incident was too long ago. I prepared Donna Edith that I would start in a month with my hunger strike, if by then was no result of the appeal proceedings. Told her clearly that I would not have the patience to take others, I meant especially her, into consideration, nor expected it of others. I had now only to think of me. The conversation was one-sided, and remained without comment from her. She probably didn't take me serious, but I would remind her of this before the start of it. In our cell happened meanwhile in and out moving. The old bag had moved out accompanied of much noise and tumult. She felt provoked when I, ostentatiously, had my headphones plugged into my ears, since I couldn't endure her endless soliloquies. She couldn't provoke me to a comment as the poisoned dwarf stood in front of me screaming. She then stood in front of the curtain to the shower. Donna Edith was behind it and didn't know what was going on, and snapped around there. Due to lack of improvement, she finally left the cell, shouting about so that the guards stood 2 minutes later in the cell, wanting to know what was going on here. Nothing, I said with my innocent look. For me the issue was done, but not for this old woman, who ran to Saúde, pretended to faint, and claimed Donna Edith had slapped her in the face. When I heard this, I laughed out loud. Donna Edith didn't feel like laughing at all, but I reassured her. No one believes that shit, which I was right with, of course. 3 days of wonderful silence reigned in the cell. Then they sent us one about 2 meters large baby elephant from South Africa, and a Spaniard into the cell that had lost all her marbles. Again, no one else wanted to have this waste in the cells. The South African never took a shower. I didn't think too much of washing. The other ran day and night, serious talks and discussions, with whom no one knew it. At least those two were not very loud. I was only afraid to get the itch again, or lice, or something. How many crazy people I still had to endure.